I want to have a cafecito chat today, a conversation on loss. I want to share some thoughts about this today. I'm not an expert and I don't pretend to be, but I know that there's many forms of loss. And sometimes talking about it will help you. You feel like the world keeps moving forward and you're stuck, like you can't go forward. And it shouldn't be like that. And it doesn't have to be like that. You know what? We've all been there. One moment can change everything and nothing makes sense. It could be like a phone call in the middle of the night, or maybe you're watching a parent or friend that you thought you would grow old pass. The silence they leave behind can be deafening. And in that silence, you believe that you are entirely alone. But you know what? You're not. Stick with me because the loss is a shadow that can take on many different shapes. As I mentioned in this conversation, there are many different kinds of loss. Now, I want you to think back to when you were in high school. Do you remember your best friend? That one that you did everything with, from texting to sleepovers or sharing that inside joke? Exactly, that friend, that bestie that got accepted into their dream school, and you both began to follow different paths. You know, first you stayed in touch with a phone call or a text and maybe that occasional visit, but then slowly, as your life got more involved at school and activities and different things, those calls started to fade. The text started to stop. And then one day you go to share that text and you realize the number was disconnected and you realize that friendship is gone and it does hurt. Or maybe you have another friend that you trusted a secret to and that person had a big mouth and suddenly everyone knows your business. Now, that kind of betrayal, it stings and it's little different, but there's still a loss because you lose that trust, that safety, that connection when that person did that. And you know what? That too shall pass because healing does come. Because all of these moments and heartbreaks, the silence, the endings, they're part of why we're here. You're going to hear me say that we all come down here on earth to learn. We came to feel, to grow, and experience life and all its forms, the good, the beautiful, and yes, even the pain. Every loss teaches us something that we in turn can teach our children. Still have that cafecito in your hand? Well, now we're going to talk about relationships. And it's not just the romantic kind that ends in divorce. No, this is even the ones where you move in together, you build a life together, and it feels like forever until it's not. In the beginning, it's exciting. You're learning from each other, you're building memories, maybe even dreaming about the future. But as time passes, people change. I know this because it happened to me. Life happens, stress, loss, growth, trauma. That person that you were at the beginning of your relationship is not the same person that you are now, and neither is your partner. Sometimes love changes, sometimes it fades, and sometimes we hold on to something that we know is not working because we're afraid to lose what we have built, that routine, that shared space, the identity that it's wrapped within having someone else. And yes, when it ends, you're struck with the realization that that person that you have become is not the same person that they fell in love with. You see yourself in the mirror, and that face that's staring back at you is not you. And again, you're going to hear me like a broken record, but when we come down here, we come down to experience it all, the joy, the heartbreak, the learning. And even in the endings, as painful as they are, these experiences are what we're here for because it's teaching us something about who are we becoming. Now, I want to pivot to another type of loss, which has to do with work. And when you finally land that job, that dream job that you work so hard for, or when you're picked to be the project manager for this special project that it's going to put you in front of the higher ups in your company, and it comes with incentives of a bonus and as well as that achievement, that recognition that you've been looking for. Well, you put all of your effort. and you dedicate late nights and weekends. You're pouring your energy, your soul into this work. And yet, despite all that hard work, the project doesn't succeed. You know, that recognition that you hope for, it doesn't materialize. And you might even find yourself losing your job entirely. That experience leaves you questioning everything like, was I not good enough? Did I do something wrong? Well, cue that music that you always hear, dun dun dun. Like, do you see a pattern yet? We all come down here with many life experiences, and some of them have lifts us up, and some of us also brings us down to our knees. But all of these are not punishments, they're teachings. I want you to open your eyes towards this. You know what happened to me the other day? I shared a post about someone who had passed. And this was all over the news. And like most people, I reacted. The story had everyone talking, and I reposted it. And it was something that was labeled that person in a certain way. Yes, it was emotionally charged. And yes, the things this person has said in the past did upset a lot of people. And you know what? Someone called me out on that, and not in a hateful way, but just like a question of, you didn't need to post this unkind thing. Someone did die. And my first reaction was, you can't tell me what to post. But then as I sat and I thought about that, and the fact that regardless of what this person did or say, you know what? There's a family right now grieving. There's a family whose child is going to grow up without this parent. It's also the same way that you feel when you see a child in a mass shooting incident, or a parent in that same way. It reminded me that not everything that I see online, it deserves my reaction. You know what? Some posts are done intentionally because they want to get a reaction. They want to pull on that emotions out of us to distract us, to divide us, and to stir the pot. You see, my reaction shouldn't have been political in any way or have my views posted on there. Just the opposite. We owe it to each other to have more kindness, to have more love. You know what I did? I deleted it because I realized my mistake. I was contributing to more pain without thinking. And I'm very grateful for that person who called me out, because it brought me back from that reaction, and it didn't feel good in my heart. And that reminder that when someone dies, no matter the politics, no matter the headlines, that's a human life gone. That grief, that doesn't need any more noise. And my motto is that things always happen for a reason. I want you to think back to 9/11. Some people were late to work that day, someone spilled a coffee on their shirt, someone else overslept, and despite that, they had set their alarms. In that moment, those little disruptions, they're very frustrating, but it's like the universe was working against them. And if you're looking back, those delays, they were life-saving. You know, we're not always meant to understand the reasons why we're in it, but over time, the picture does get clearer. That detour, that disappointment, it's never random. The divine is always at work. You just have to listen to it, see the signs, read the cues, because it's all around us. It's always redirecting us. It was a protection, it was a preparation for something greater, as the divine, like I say, is always at work. Now, you ever heard of Carlos Acutis? Pope Francis just declared him the Blessed Carlos Acutis, the first millennial saint of the digital age. It just happened this week. He was a simple young 15-year-old who grew up learning about the Eucharist, and he has such an infinite love for Jesus and the Eucharist that he used his gifts with coding and about computers because he wanted to create a place where you can find out about Eucharistic miracles. He traveled with his parents, he researched, and he built a website that's now translated into many languages to inspire other people and to learn about that. At just 15, he was diagnosed with an aggressive form of leukemia, and he passed away a couple of days later. His life was short, but he had a purpose. Like I mentioned, we're all here to learn something and to teach others things. And that's exactly why his story reminds me that loss is not only about what we lose, but about the lessons and the legacy that they leave behind. He showed that even as a teenager with a laptop, he was able to change the world through faith and purpose. I want you to do something. I want you to cry. It's okay to cry because you're letting out that pain, that frustration that you feel inside, and that's going to help you heal. Loss is messy. I know that I'm not the only one. I know this for a fact. But you know what? There are so many moments where you are angry at yourself because you're not doing anything, or the next moment you're fine, or the next moment you're crying over a commercial that you saw on the television. You know, life is a collection of experiences, and loss is one of them. It's the most powerful lessons that we have. Go to therapy, seek help, seek that professional that you need to talk to, because by taking that small step, I want you to know that you're not alone. As you begin to feel more supported, you're going to start to look back at it and you're going to start to heal. This is how you can reclaim who you are, that tiny action, one step at a time. You know, today you made your bed. Tomorrow you're going to take a walk, and you know what? You're going to start noticing one beautiful thing after the other. These small wins build you inside. One action will cause another action. Soon you're going to realize that what is meant for you cannot be taken away from you. If there's an opportunity that passes you by, I want you to know it's only because there is something even better, something that your mind couldn't even fathom that's coming your way. I want you to take a deep breath. You live through more than you give yourself credit for. Loss is not just one thing, it comes in many different forms. And know that you're not alone, that the divine is always there for you. I want you to remember that kindness really does matter, and I want you to pass it on. So, I want to leave you with this last thought. I have already mentioned it earlier, but things truly do happen for a reason. Sometimes our eyes are closed because we're not meant to know what it is right away. But like I said, life unfolds and it becomes clearer as we begin to understand the reasons why. I want you to leave me a comment and share your thoughts. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear at this exact moment who's going through something similar, as we're all here to help each other out. If this inspired you, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, Anita Inspires, and find this podcast on all available podcast streaming services.